when the bank failures happened in March, it was just, it was like, we all know what we're in Bitcoin for, and that, this legacy system is failing. And you can understand that from a backdrop, but when acute things happen in moments of time, like Silicon Valley Bank failing, it's like, it really reinforced both the idea of what would you build if the banking system weren't there.
Since 2020, our world has been changing now more than ever. And it feels like we've seen a decade's worth of change within the past 3 years. That's because change occurs in an exponential fashion and not a linear one. This is where you hear about the phrase gradually, then suddenly. Today, I am joined by the man who has popularized the term gradually, then suddenly in the Bitcoin space. And of course, I'm talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Parker Lewis. Now, let's get right into the interview. But first, be sure to stick around until the end of the conversation as we talk about his book, Gradually, Then Suddenly, and the term towards the end of the interview. Now let's get right into it. All right, we are live here at Startup Day at Pleb Lab with Parker Lewis and Will Cole. Man, how you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Doing great.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Just gave my talk. Look forward to hanging out a bit and hearing others too.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, ZapRight. Both of you guys are now working with ZapRight. So why now? I mean, I know it's kind of like an interesting time, bear market, all that kind of stuff. So you guys were both with Unchained, is that correct? So yeah, why kind of get started with ZapRight? And yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I'll give my twist and I'll let Will give his. But really my origin story to coming to ZapRight, I'd known John, both of us had known John for a good while, based here in Austin, the Bitcoin capital of the world. Bitcoin, if it's not Bitcoin capital of the world, it's certainly the Bitcoin capital of Texas and Tennessee. And really, I had a problem, which was I wanted to receive Bitcoin payments, and what I wanted to exist didn't. And ZapRight was closest. And was talking to Will about the idea of, like, outside the context of ZapRight, what we would build if we were going to work on the Bitcoin payment space. And then seeing kind of the foundation that ZapRight had, it was really close to what we would have built from a blank slate. And then also just for me, at least personally, when the bank failures happened in March, it was just, it was like, we all know what we're in Bitcoin for, and that, this legacy system is failing. And you can understand that from a backdrop, but when acute things happen in moments of time, like Silicon Valley Bank failing, it's like, it really reinforced both the idea of what would you build if the banking system weren't there, which I think is a good heuristic, and also just sharpening that to have some more urgency to say, like, hey, focusing on enabling Bitcoin payments, which is a huge other side of, Bitcoin being viable as a currency. And so, really focusing on, the problem that we wanted to solve for ourselves, which was at its core, how to receive Bitcoin payments in a non-custodial way without running a server. And so, knew, like John, aligned with his vision, solving a tangible problem that we both had, but then also looking at the context of kind of the timing, why now, like, the world feels like it's ready for Bitcoin payments in a bigger way. The solution that we thought should exist didn't, and that rather than start from scratch, John had built such a strong foundation at ZapRight that and we liked him so much, aligned with him as a Bitcoiner, that it just made sense.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, yeah, first, John's the man. He's been working on this for a while. And I'd run across him here at Pleb Lab and also in the Bitcoin Commons over by the Unchained offices. To be perfectly honest, like, when I was at Unchained, I just wasn't paying attention to any other products or anything going on. So I hadn't given it too much thought. But there was something that crossed my desk towards the end of the time I was working at Unchained that really influenced my thinking on payments in general, not just Bitcoin payments, which was a company called Modern Treasury. And when Unchained was looking at taking fiat payments, whether it be for IRAs or whatever, we were talking to the usual suspects, the Braintrees and Stripes of the world. And you talk to Stripe, and one day they think you guys are great. We want to help you out. And the next day it's like, but the Bitcoin thing kind of scares us. And then the next day they love you again. And I also, honestly, I'd used Stripe before at Stack Overflow and other places. I didn't really understand the nature of their business. The fact that Stripe takes custody over the funds that they take, and then they pay you out when they want to, right? And when you are a business that is operating with over 100 employees, and you need that cash in your bank account, but it's up to a business or a custodian that says sometimes they like Bitcoin and sometimes they don't. That's a precarious place to be. Modern Treasury was a really interesting business in that in the product world, we would call it like a dumb pipe, where they basically connect banking APIs together in the fiat world so that you can have a direct relationship between your customer's bank account and your own. This was hugely attractive, and it turns out, I mean, they're like a $5 billion company, and I was just had tunnel vision at Unchained until I opened myself up to this. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I weren't working on Bitcoin, this is the type of company I'd want to work for in the fiat world. Like, this is very cool. It's solving like this counterparty risk problem that people have in the fiat world. And when Parker and I both left Unchained and we were thinking about what to do next, Parker was talking a lot about, setting up his blog and his book and the payments he was going to have to receive. He was thinking about this. From my side, it was, while the world's not on Bitcoin standard yet, the Cole family is. We pay each other in Bitcoin. We settle our debts in Bitcoin. And typically that means getting an address from one of our cold storage wallets and sending it through Signal to each other. And we've been doing this for years.
Cole only issues debt denominated in Bitcoin.
Correct.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So we've been on the Bitcoin standard for quite a while here, and it's just a silly way to pay each other. And so while Parker had like a business use case that I had, or like a broader use case on e-commerce sort of thing, mine was very much in the invoicing world that John had already been working on. And once John showed me it, I was blown away. I was like, oh, this is how I'm going to get my dad to pay me for that thing,
Yeah, get your dad to pay you for mowing the lawn or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm only 40 years old.
Yeah,
I'm still doing those types of things. Yeah. But no, exactly. And so like it resonated. And then Parker said something to me that really sealed the deal for me, because we could have worked on anything, honestly. I mean, like, we wanted to work in Bitcoin and provide value. I remember saying, like, BTC Pay Server really solves this. I love BTC Pay Server, but I'm not really a user. I don't sell things online. And Parker's comment to me was, BTC Pay Server is great if you want to run a server. And I don't want to run a server. And it was overkill for what I needed to do. And so there's this middle ground in the product world that I feel like Zapprite is hitting. I feel like Unchained hit it as well with multisig, where they made multisig accessible through the ownership of a key, a backup key that Unchained could have. I think Mutiny's one of these in the middle companies where products where it's non-custodial Lightning, but you don't have to do channel management, for instance, is that I like that little middle ground where you can get, say, 90% of the value of transacting and custodying Bitcoin, but you make it accessible to where people will actually do it. And I feel like Zapprite is taking that same approach where, on BTC Pay Server, it's a very purist, side of things. And I think a lot of people will want to do that, and that's great. Then there's, OpenNode and the BitPays and things like that, where it's, fully custodial and stuff like that. We're trying to find this middle ground where you get a lot of the value of transacting and custodying Bitcoin, but we're delivering it in a way where you're more likely to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's all, like, amazing stuff. And, I've talked to John before about Zapprite, and like, sure. I believe fully in that product and kind of what you guys are trying to solve. But I want to take it back a little bit, because you guys both have experience at Unchained, right? So, I mean, I would say that's a fairly successful Bitcoin company, but now you guys are kind of taking a step back, almost going to square one. So how are you guys going to use that experience at Unchained? It's a little bit of a different environment as far as like the Bitcoin space goes, with, obviously years have passed, more people are onboarded onto Bitcoin, more people are aware of everything. But, it's still kind of a bear market, right? The kind of normies are still a little afraid of Bitcoin payments and things like that. So, how are you guys using that experience with Unchained to kind of help with, helping John and everything build Zapprite? Yeah,
I think that one, I don't think about it as like kind of back to square one.
Okay.
I think that if I if I think about the evolution, about every Bitcoiner's journey, that kind of like on an individual level, but then also an aggregate, it is that custody sits at the foundation. If Bitcoin's going to be a store of value, and if a 21 million fixed supply, finite scarcity, which Bitcoin's a form of money that can't be printed, if that's going to be of value to anybody, it can't be like, one, it can't be of value to you if you don't understand it. Two, it can't be of value to you if it's possible to lose. Imagine you have a whole Bitcoin. If you lost that Bitcoin scarcity does nothing for you. So the logical first problem for somebody who's figured out why Bitcoin will store value is finding an application that will allow them to store value over time. And that is Unchained and other similar type applications. The idea of multi-sig with a collaborative partner to hold a key. It's why Will and I are both still clients of Unchained. Zapright's a customer of Unchained. So where I don't see it as going to square one is that the next step of a Bitcoiner's journey, once they've come to the conclusion of, I figured out why Bitcoin's going to store value. I need to store my value in Bitcoin. If I'm going to do that, I need a solution that is going to be secured now and for the rest of time. Now I want to receive Bitcoin payments. And the idea is I first have to understand why Bitcoin will store value over time to then say, I'm willing to sell my goods and services directly for that, because it's actually a more efficient path to getting the Bitcoin. Not just because of the KYC requirements or not, based on how we're deploying Bitcoin payments, but realistically also just like, hey, if one of my customers wants to pay me directly, I can do that more efficiently than taking dollars, the cost associated with it, time associated to then go to a Bitcoin exchange and convert it. So I view it as the natural evolution of any Bitcoiner's journey. It's first decide to store value, second, find that solution, and then you realize, well, I should just be accepting Bitcoin payments. And that's really why kind of, in the application of Zapright, it is, hey, we're focusing on a couple specific types of payments that we think marry well in terms of timing perspective, which are Bitcoiners issuing invoices for services, like contract services, professional services, as well as Bitcoiners that are often running small to medium-sized businesses selling goods or services online.
Yeah, I mean, to echo Parker there, I mean, Unchained is a critical part of the equation. I think we wrote that in our announcement that we were working at Zapright, that this isn't square one. This isn't trying to, we're not competing with Unchained or anything like that. And Unchained remains critical to the equation of how people are going to use Bitcoin long term. I would say in terms of like, how does that help? It's like, you can't accept Bitcoin payments unless there are good custody options. It has to start there. And I remember talking to Parker about this back in 2016, 2017 even, is that the first problem to solve in the sort of monetization journey of Bitcoin becoming money is that you have to be able to store it over the long term. And so Unchained's not the only one, but it's a very good one in helping people do that. And if you go to a business and you say you should accept payment in Bitcoin, you have to also be able to offer them good custody options. So there's a logical order of operations when it comes to the types of things that we've been deciding to do. But I would say outside of that, I mean, honestly, like the value that Unchained helps us with here is that we've been operating in the Bitcoin space for longer now. And for me personally, having been into Bitcoin for a long time before I actually started working on it, like as an investor, basically, is coming to terms with and getting a better sense of what types of trade-offs you need to bring a good product to market. And when I say trade-offs, I mean allowing people to get the value out of transacting and owning Bitcoin, but also making it accessible enough to where they'll actually do it. And I think that the more time I spent working on Bitcoin specifically, not just as an investor, the better instincts that we have on the product side, and the better products that we're going to build.
Yeah, and then on the market side of your question too, which I'll just add something on. It's impossible to build a business that's servicing Bitcoiners if you're not a Bitcoiner, because of the reason that you could never build through the cycles if you didn't have a longer term vision of what Bitcoin is, where it's going, and the conviction around that. The two co-founders at Unchained, Joe Drew, who we joined, they could have never set out to build Unchained, or we couldn't have been their partners to build Unchained if we didn't see through that cycle of that was 2018 going down to 3,000 up to 12 back down to 4. It applies to all Bitcoiners building any business in Bitcoin, but it certainly applies here. It's like, are we right about the fact that this is a need, and that the approach that we're delivering or where we're focusing is right? And then is the timing of are there enough Bitcoiners that want to receive Bitcoin today right? Because realistically, the last thing that we think about is the point of the cycle, but it's also that conviction and clarity of vision that allows people to build through the volatility and not get caught up on it. And that's actually what separates Bitcoin companies, because the Bitcoiners are able to do that when everybody else, like right now, is turning off the screen, when right now is actually the precise time to build. And then what will happen is the next wave will come in and a bunch of people will be like, oh, there should be an app for that, I'll build that. And then the market will go away, and then, they'll go back to their fiat job. Well, the Bitcoiners keep building because they know.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points too, but I want to kind of dive into, we talked about the market, we talked about kind of like your phase, like how you guys see Zapright fitting in with Unchained and all kind of like those steps. But I want to dive into Austin, because it's really a unique environment here compared to like around the country, around the globe.
Especially compared to Nashville.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I'm an Austinite too. So, I mean, true at heart. So, I mean,
we are too.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't born here, but I was raised here. So, I mean, we were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier, but now I'm a Tampa guy, so I have to rep Tampa while I'm there. But obviously you guys have, the Commons. We're here in Pleb Lab. There's a lot of companies here. A great startup culture, startup days going on now at Pleb Lab. How do you think that helps not only like Zapright, but all the other Bitcoin companies that are trying to build something like in this bear market where, sometimes it might be some lulls and some like difficulties seeing some progress because, it's a long summer, right? I mean, price is kind of floating. Maybe there's nothing too exciting that people are seeing, like big news items, but when it comes to the day-to-day, there's people building great, exciting things here, right? I mean, I paid 21 sats to get into this door here today, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of like great building and products being built here in Austin specifically. So I want to hear your guys' opinion about, just being kind of in this environment and how that you think that this can help elevate not only like yourself, but like Zapright as well.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with, Austin has, since I've been in Bitcoin, or aware of Bitcoin, because it's already a tech center, it's always been a hub for Bitcoiners. There are a lot of core developers that live here. There are a lot of people that work remotely for bigger companies. I'm not going to dox any of them, but there's always been a really nice community here of people that were interested in Bitcoin and built and specifically actually doing something about it. I lived in New York City for a little bit, and it was while it was great, and I think maybe the first Bit Devs was in New York, but I used to go to that back in 2013, 2014. Whenever I come to Austin, there are always big meetups and things like that. So it's a mature Bitcoin community. I would say that the thing that I think set Austin apart was 2020, the pandemic, when after Parker and I had come back from BitBlock Boom and calling up Justin Moon and saying like, we have to keep doing this in person. And I think one of the things that and it wasn't just like three weirdos that wanted to do it. A lot of people showed up, and then people started flying in from all over the country. And I think that that gave us a head start. But in reality, there are other great places. Nashville's awesome, what they're doing there. And I hope that the Commons serves as sort of inspiration for a lot of different places. But yeah, there are special things happening here. You have anchor companies that are established, well-funded, hiring, things like that. You have community spaces like Pleb Lab and the Bitcoin Commons that give startups a place to work out of, that introduce networks of capital allocation and VC and things like that. You have a lot of the ingredients that it takes to make an industry take off in a home, right? And typically those things are talent, anchor companies, and financing. And Austin, I think, was pretty much the first one in a Bitcoin specific way to hit on all three of those sort of levers. So it has a head start, but every city is going to be a Bitcoin city. Austin's just the first one.
Yeah, and I think when you have the combination of like the Commons that is 5-6 blocks down the road, Pleb Lab here, bookending the comedy mothership, Rogan moving his comedy shop also on 6th Street, that all those things don't happen by coincidence. And I think that Austin has a very entrepreneurial, it's a combination of entrepreneurial spirit, like Will said, it's a tech center, but then there is this like come and take it mentality, where that, the entrepreneurial spirit is just one half of the kind of combining with Bitcoin of like the mentality of like, we're up to the task and we're going to go out there and survive the storm. And that when you think about kind of the being able to build, it's that when the rest of the world's turned the TV off because Bitcoin died and they'll find out that it didn't, that being around other builders, other people working on it and being able to see like, hey, when there's no escaping fatigue, right? Like just because you're a Bitcoiner doesn't mean that you're immune to these things, but that when you look down the row and you're like, oh, that person's focused, that person's focused, I'm going to continue to build, and that they're not getting, kind of overwhelmed by the, state of the market or fatigue, that being around other Bitcoiners really helps, not just in terms of the collaboration and sharing of ideas, which is a huge part of it. Like if I have an issue, being able to ask Tony or Paul or Ben Carman, that are sitting a table away, a question about something, like there's real value to that. Like there's a reason why particularly development talent wants to aggregate to be around each other, because there's actual work product benefits, but there's also this spirit that goes along with it too, especially in the Bitcoin world of like, hey, when everybody else is focused around you, that gives you the drive to continue to be focused too and be locked in. So
I'll add one more thing. I mean, you went to high school here. Parker and I, grew up here, went to high school here as well. Is that it's not specific to Austin, but it's specific to Texas. Texas is different. I know it's very annoying to people that don't live in Texas or are not from here. We have our own founding fathers. We were our own country. We've been, 6 different countries at different times. As cliche as it is for a Texan to say this, and as annoying it is to hear it as a non-Texan, it is different. And I think that there is a lot that we grew up with as Texans and growing up in Austin, with our own legends, our own founding, and kind of our own personality that is outside of that of being an American citizen or being in the Western world, that surprisingly aligns with a lot of what I think makes Bitcoin special, right? There's always been a different sort of vibe of conservatism here. It's more libertarian in a way, and it's a little bit anti-establishment. And there's a reason that like the punk movement did so well in San Antonio and Houston and Austin as well, is that there's just something that you grow up with. It's in the water, and it's in our public schools, and it's in our private schools that that you get, that seems to mix well with what Bitcoin brings to the world.
yeah, and also like people get annoyed by this, but like Texas is so great,
It's so big
that we, Texas is bigger than France.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah. It's bigger than Germany as well, isn't it?
way bigger.
Yeah, way bigger.
Well, I'm saying like
it's actually bigger than Australia.
Oh.
No, it's not.
You could fit.
Yeah, it's not. But
everything.
But Texas is so great that we have our own power grid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our own navy. Now, most people don't know that we have our own navy, but Texas does have its own navy. But our power grid too. That's the other thing about Bitcoin being here in Austin, that our own power grid, center of hash. Like if you want to build on Bitcoin, and especially if you're building a script business in Nashville and you're not in Austin, like you've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hey, Texas pride, right? Texas forever. You had clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose in your presentation today. I absolutely love that. So, I mean, yeah, that I always bring that up to people too. They're like, "Hey, what was it like growing up in Texas?" I was like, "Well, if you've seen Friday Night Lights, it's exactly like that." Or, I mean, Friday nights, if you're not going to the football games, like, what are you doing? I mean, I went to college like outside of Texas, and so the first football game I went to, it wasn't like a University of Memphis, so we won 2 games the first year I was there. I just was studying in the morning and I just showed up to the football game. And I called all my friends like, "Hey, where are you?" And they're like, "We're not at the football game." I'm like, "Why not? This is what you do." And they're just like, "Yeah, football isn't really a big thing here." So yeah, I mean, it's definitely that Texan pride, and like kind of, just growing up in that is awesome. I mean, think like 7th or 8th grade, I had just Texas history as opposed to anything else too.
Oh,
yeah. So I mean, great stuff like that. But we do have a great week here, right? I mean, we got Startup Day today. We got, Underground Citadel tomorrow, and then BitBlock Boom the rest of the week. So, what are you guys looking to get out of it for ZapRight yourselves? And what are you looking forward to for the rest of the week?
Probably what I'm looking forward the most is just hanging out with all the Bitcoiners. BitBlock Boom is my favorite. Say that 3 times fast. It's not possible.
Exactly.
But it's my favorite Bitcoin conference because of the Bitcoiners who come. So that's what I'm looking forward the most. I'm going to give a presentation at BitBlock Boom, and then I'll also be launching my crowdfund for the Gradually and Suddenly book.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, just hanging out with all the Bitcoiners, especially people that don't live in Texas, because every BitBlock Boom now that it's in Austin, 15 people move here. So I'm interested.
Yeah,
to see
we think about it as sport. It's like, who can we knock off this week to get them to move to Austin?
How many more people can you make a transplant down here?
Yeah, so you guys will get a few more members here at Pleb Lab over this week. We'll get some more people over at the Commons. It'll be a good poaching season here.
For sure. It's funny because like growing up, I had a shirt from Tyler's that says like "Don't move to Austin," but now it seems like every time Bitcoiners come here, they're trying to.
We want Bitcoiners to move to Austin. We don't want normies. It's like exactly. We want everybody, but like realistically, if a Bitcoiner comes, the streets of Austin will be paved in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
More Bitcoiners around, more Bitcoin, better things are going to happen.
Yeah, this is in San Francisco. We don't try to like keep people away and all that. That's a declining city of shrinking population. The more people, the better.
Yeah, San Francisco is the modern day Alamo.
Oh man. Yeah, somebody was saying like earlier today that it's more likely to get arrested if you're a police officer than like an actual person there. So I mean, it's kind of gone crazy. But before I let you guys go, what's next for ZapRight? Like, I don't know if you can give us a little peek under the hood for like maybe the rest of the year or next year. Like, what kind of things are you guys looking forward?
Sure. I mean, what Parker demonstrated today, I think, is the very beginning of our foray into sort of the e-commerce space. I think that it's a really nice start, and that it'll help a lot of people. But for people running larger operations, they have big Shopify web stores or WooCommerce or things like that. There'll be a little bit of a shift from just doing wallet integrations into e-commerce integrations to make sure we can handle those big stores. We don't want to be a big store ourselves necessarily. So I think for people that already have large businesses running online, that will be there soon, ready for you, and have you accepting Bitcoin payments directly to your wallet of choice.
Awesome stuff. Well, Parker, Will, thank you guys so much for coming in and giving me your time, and I look forward to interacting with you guys the rest of the week.
If you made it this far into today's interview, really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more about hyper-Bitcoinization and why Bitcoin could be adopted gradually, then suddenly, I highly recommend you check out my interview with Samson Mao, who of course is the man on a mission to Orange Pill nation states all around the world. And in that interview, we dive so much deeper into why Bitcoin could be adopted gradually, then suddenly. Go ahead and click on this link right here. And if you enjoyed this video and find value in the videos, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel to get notifications of the next upcoming videos. All right, I'll see you in the next one.